What's up, guys? Welcome to Moxie Bets, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm your host, Katie Mox. Coming up on today's show, we're talking NBA playoffs with our very special guest NBA writer for ESPN, Tim Bontemps. We'll break down each of the NBA playoff series so far and let you know who we think will move on. Plus, I've got some Mox Locks coming your way for tonight's matchups. Let's go ahead and welcome in our guest, Tim Bontemps. Tim, how are you doing today? I see you're in Philly for game 2 here.
Yes, thanks, Katie. Appreciate you having me. Should be an interesting game tonight. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're an NBA writer for ESPN, formerly Washington Post, NY Post. Obviously, you have a love for the game. How did you get into writing for the NBA? I'm assuming there is a team or just a general love for the game that got you here.
Yeah, I was always into basketball, and I was at the New York Post. I was doing some general assignment stuff, and the Nets beat came open when the Nets moved across the river from New Jersey to Brooklyn. Guy who covered the team did not want to travel in from New Jersey to cover the team in Brooklyn, so I was able to get on the beat, did that for a couple of years, and 10, 11 years later, here I am covering Nets Sixers in the first round.
I love that. So are you a Nets fan or you kind of keep things more general?
No, I actually grew up rooting against the great teams because I grew up near Buffalo, and all my
Ah,
friends who rooted for the Bills started rooting for the Cowboys when the
mm.
Bills lost them in the Super Bowl, and they also rooted for the Cowboys and the Bulls after that because they just won. So I started sort of just active rooting against the elite teams after that. So that's sort of what I did from then
You're
until,
contrarian.
that's right. That's exactly right.
I love that. Okay, so let's get things started with Mox Thought today. Chat through some of the biggest storylines swirling around this postseason. So, since the playoffs expansion to 16 teams, only one seeded team, worse than third, has won the title. That was the Rockets back in 1994-95 with the 6th seed. However, Tim, this year feels so much more wide open in terms of storylines. Just in this first round, you got the Battle of NorCal between the Kings and the Warriors. You got Brown versus Kerr, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry. It's their first time in the same conference playoff field. Is this LeBron's last dance? And there's so much going on in the East as well. What are some of the storylines that you're paying close attention to?
Unfortunately, Katie, the real main storyline at this point is injuries. Injuries to John Morant, to
Yeah.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, to Tyler Hero, to Paul George, even the status of Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, it's really the first couple days of the playoffs have been great, and I think it's going to be really. It's got a chance to be a great playoffs, like you said. But right now, to me, the dominant storyline is just who is going to be on the court and how is that going to impact these teams going forward? Because we've seen some very big name players either get hurt this weekend or in the case of Paul George, their status is kind of hanging over this
Yeah.
first round.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. So the NBA charge slash block rules, you just hit it right there. Two of the league's biggest stars, John Morant, Giannis, forced to leave the game, suffering injuries after opposing players sought to draw charging calls against them. Both the Bucks and the Grizzlies dropped those games following those injuries. It brings a lot of questions, and a lot of people are questioning, is this time to change the rules here for the NBA's charge and block rules? Do they make sense anymore? You got Mark Cuban saying that he has said to move the circle farther away from the basket, taking an extra foot away from the hoop that would reduce charges and drives dramatically. He says he's put that out there and it hasn't gone anywhere. What do you think of the rules?
I think that if there needs to be, I understand why people would say that the charge should go away. I think in general, it should exist. I do think these plays where you have guys stepping in under guys who are already in the air are the plays that I would like to see legislated out. They are the ones that lead to the kind of injuries that you're talking about, right? Where guys are having violent falls from very high up in the air.
Yeah.
I think Mark Cuban's idea to move the charge circle out is a really good one. If Anthony Davis had to step a couple feet farther out from the basket, maybe that play with John Morant doesn't happen the same way it does in that Laker Grizzly game, right? Because Ja can't, as much as Ja can fly through the air, he probably can't from outside the free throw line, which is where he might have to be if the charge circle was a bit farther out. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets changed this summer. I do think there's a little momentum in that direction, but it remains to be seen if it's actually going to get there. This isn't the first time people have talked about getting rid of charges or changing it. And as Mark said, the momentum for it has kind of died on the vine a bunch of times in the past.
Well, it'll be interesting this year because, like you said, the biggest storyline right now is injuries. Two of the biggest stars taken out in the first round. Now, we don't know if John Morant is going to be in game 2, and it seems like Giannis might be out a little bit further. I don't know. We're going to have to take a look at it. Tickets to the game, merch, meals at iconic restaurants, stays at Caesar Palace. All this can be yours when you bet with Caesar Sportsbook. Win or lose, every bet earns reward credits, which you can redeem across the empire. Now, if you haven't started yet, register using code OMAHAFULL and then place your first bet up to $1,250. If you win, great. You keep those winnings. But if you lose, you'll get your stake back as a bonus bet. Need fresh groceries for the week but don't have time to go to the store? Try grocery delivery from DoorDash. You'll get everything you want delivered when you need it right to your door. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. Want even more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with $0 delivery fee on eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. With easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $10 value when you use code Moxie Bets at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $10 on a $15 minimum subtotal and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code Moxie Bets. Don't forget, that's code Moxie Bets for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. If we look at these first round series that are underway, starting with the two number one seeds versus eight seeds, Nuggets and Timberwolves. Tim, the Timberwolves got absolutely worked last night, losing 80-109 to the Nuggets. Now, Denver is the number one seed, but did you predict that large of a blowout?
I wasn't really surprised that game went the way it did, Katie. The Wolves had to play Friday night in the 8-9 game. They'd played Tuesday against the Lakers in the 7-8 game. They're playing at altitude against a very rested Denver team, a Denver team that had been sort of waiting for the playoffs to start basically since the beginning of March and had kind of scuffled their way down the stretch, not really looking all that interested in the final few weeks of the regular season. So that felt like a game that Denver would win going away. If this series is going to be competitive, we'll see if game two is a little more compelling. Wolves get a couple days off in the game, should get a chance to rest. That will help them out. So we'll see what happens Wednesday night. But yeah, certainly I thought Denver had a very good chance to win that series comfortably. And from watching game one, there's little reason to believe that Minnesota is going to offer much resistance to them for sure.
Yeah, speaking of Minnesota and their scuffles, there was another scuffle last night that led to a flagrant foul on Anderson just days after they had an internal struggle. What is going on with this Minnesota team?
I mean, it's been a disappointing season for Minnesota, Katie. You go back to last summer, they made the huge trade for Rudy Gobert. There's been a ton of pressure on this Wolves team. Karl Townsend missed most of the season with a calf injury. He only came back from in the final few weeks of the regular season. They went out and traded for Mike Conley at the trade deadline. Now they have Jaden McDaniels break his hand in the regular season finale against the Pelicans, punching a wall. He's their best perimeter player, or perimeter defender, I should say. Then they have Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson who have their issues, and Rudy gets suspended for the Laker game. Frankly, if Rudy had played in a Laker game, there's a good chance that Minnesota wins that game because they only really lost the game when Karl Towns wasn't on the court, and they just had no way to compete with the Lakers' size inside. So, it's been a roller coaster, to put it mildly, for Minnesota. They've been able to bounce back, though, before in the past. And like I said, we'll see if a couple days off and a chance to acclimate to the altitude will allow them to play a little bit better on Wednesday night in game two.
Well, hopefully they do, because they're 8.5-point dogs. Now, I know you're not into the gambling portion of it, but basically the books are saying that's a lot of points to give the Nuggets here. How do you see game two playing out? Do you think when they adjust to the altitude, they could possibly win this game or get a little bit closer within the 8.5 points?
I would probably take the points in Denver personally. I just think that the Nuggets are a better team. Maybe Minnesota gets a game at home in Minneapolis in game three or game four, but I think Denver, as you saw in game one, I think without Jaden McDaniels, it's going to be hard for Minnesota to defend the Nuggets in this series. And with Nikola Jokic, they've been pretty unbelievable from an offensive standpoint all season long. So I would take Denver in the 8.5 as of now.
Okay.
Expect them to take care of business again.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. Okay, moving on to the Bucks versus the Heat. Giannis, of course, exited early with a back injury. He finished the game with just 6 points, making way for the Heat to beat the Bucks 130-117. What does this mean if Giannis can't play for this series or longer for the Bucks? Because they're my favorite to win the whole thing, and they're actually still second in the odds board at plus 330 to win it all. It was plus 350 before the game, so it's interesting that the odds got a little bit better for them in terms of being a favorite. But what do you think about this Giannis situation in the Bucks?
Well, I mean, obviously, if Giannis Antetokounmpo is not playing, the Bucks are not winning the championship. I mean, to your point, they're my pick to win the title too. He's the best player on the planet. If he's not on the court, Milwaukee can, I think, win this series without him. But they're not gonna be able to get through the playoffs if Giannis is out for an extended period of time. So certainly, we'll be waiting to see what the results are of any further imaging that's done on Giannis today after that hard fall on his back early in the first half
Yeah.
of their game against Minnesota. But the Heat played really, really well in game one, but they have proven to be a team that struggles to score offensively all season long. They're not a great shooting team. I suspect that as this series progresses, I think that Milwaukee's defense is going to be able to lock in whether Giannis is available or not. And I feel pretty good about the Bucks winning game two in particular, getting this thing 1-1 going back to Miami for game three. But yeah, from a big picture standpoint, if Giannis isn't healthy, the Bucks aren't winning. But I think they're going to get it done in this series. And to be honest, I thought a very encouraging thing from Milwaukee's standpoint was the play of Chris Middleton on Sunday.
Yeah.
He has struggled with injuries this year. Had a huge game, scored over 30 points, looked more like himself. And if they get that version of Chris Middleton going forward, Bucks are going to be okay, assuming they can get Giannis back.
Okay, well, it was scary to see him on the ground like that. So hopefully he heals faster rather than longer. But also, Tyler Hero is expected to miss 4 to 8 weeks after breaking his middle finger, I think 2 fingers on his shooting hand. Reggie Miller said that Hero is a bigger loss to Miami than Giannis is to the Bucks. Do you agree?
No, I don't know what Reggie was talking about. Tyler Hero's a great player. He's not the best player on the planet. So, I mean, Miami struggles to score. Tyler would obviously help them score. I actually think with Max Strus and Duncan Robinson, they actually have guys that can plug in and give them relatively similar production on the wing. And frankly, it can maybe improve their defense a little bit when they have either, especially if they have Max Strus out there more, they go with Victor Oladipo as a more defensive option against Middleton or Drew Holiday. So, yeah, I mean, Tyler Hero's a really nice player. It sucked that happened to him, especially as a guy who's from Wisconsin playing at home. In the Heat were playing well in the game, but no, he's not a more important loss to the Heat than the best player on the planet is to the Bucks. I don't think the Heat or even Tyler would frankly probably agree with that statement from Reggie.
What about Jimmy Buckets? He had a good game, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 11 assists. Do you expect another big game from Jimmy Buckets in game two?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy's been a big-time postseason performer his whole career. You saw him have that huge game 6 last year in Boston, one of the best games I've ever seen live to get that series back to a game 7. And he was 1 3-pointer away from dragging the Heat to the finals against a much better Celtics team. So I expect Jimmy to show up. I expect him to play great. And, with no Giannis, I do think Miami has a chance because they have Jimmy Butler and they also have Bam Adebayo,
Yeah.
who, after a couple of rough games last week in the play-in tournament, was getting back in the lane, getting those 8 to 10 to 12-foot push floater shots that Brook Lopez is just going to let him take. And if Bam is hitting those shots and Jimmy's playing the way he did in game one, if there's no Giannis, Miami could win this series. This is a team that was, like I said, in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, is a team with a lot of talent that has not really lived up to expectations. But, if you get in a playoff series like this and you have a crazy injury like this thing with Giannis, if he's out, all of a sudden it opens the door for some weird stuff to happen.
Yeah, was not high on the Heat. I actually thought they might lose the play-in tournament to the Bulls there, and that didn't end up happening. So I've been pretty surprised with the way that the Heat have been playing. Moving on to the Clippers versus the Suns. This one surprised me because I really thought that the Suns would actually sweep the Clippers here, but the Clippers took game one, 115 to 110 behind Kawhi Leonard, 38-point performance. Kawhi's one of those players where you just never know if he's going to play, but then of course when he does, he drops 38 points and is amazing. Paul George, like you said, likely to miss the entire first round. It's KD's 7th straight playoff loss dating back to 2021. He failed to score in the first quarter despite playing over 10 minutes, but of course he ended leading the team with 27 points. Are we worried about the Suns here?
I'd be a little worried from the standpoint that Kawhi Leonard was by far the best player on the court in game one, and he's one of the few guys in the world that's capable of outplaying Kevin Durant over 7 games. And if he continues to play like he did in game one, guarding Durant on defense, getting whatever he wanted on offense, then yeah, I think the Clippers are a live team in this series for sure, especially if they can possibly get Paul George back, even though our agent Wojnarowski has reported it's very unlikely he will play. To me, the real question for the Clippers going forward is what version of Russell Westbrook are they going to get? Russ was pretty awful for
Yeah.
most of this game, had a couple great hustle plays down the stretch, hit a couple big free throws, got a block on Devin Booker to sort of seal the win. But in the aggregate, he was a very big negative. And it's going to be interesting
Yeah.
to see if Ty Lue, the coach of the Clippers, is willing to stick with him no matter what, or if he'll go the other way if Russ isn't getting it done later in this series. Because I don't think they can get away with Westbrook going, 3 for 19 the way he did in game one and winning a lot more games in the series. But Kawhi was incredible. The Clippers are a much deeper team. You saw the Suns sort of searching for a fifth guy throughout that game. They played 6 players, 24 minutes or more. They played another 5 under 10. That's a sign of a coach trying to figure out what he wants to do with his rotation. I don't think there's a lot of good options there for Monty Williams. So I think the Clippers have a chance. I think it's going to be a long series, but the Suns are the more talented team. And assuming Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are healthy, they should come out of this with Paul George sideline.
I agree with you on this one, especially because you're not going to expect Kevin Durant to go scoreless in the first quarter again. But Devin Booker was sensational on defense last night. Was that one of the more impressive things that you saw, or who impressed you the most in that matchup?
I mean, like I said, Kawhi was the most impressive player in the game because he
True.
was the best player on the court. But I've never seen Devin play defense like that. He was really, really good. And if he continues to play with that kind of effort, the Suns are going to be in pretty good shape. I thought he was fantastic throughout the game and just got beat by a better player. But I thought he really tried to set the tone. The thing I would like to see if I'm a Suns fan is down the stretch of that game, it was a lot of DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul and not a lot of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Durant in particular only took one shot in the final 9 minutes. He made a 3 with about 90 seconds to go. Otherwise, didn't really have the ball. Kawhi sort of, Deion Sanders him out of the game, and they were basically playing 4-on-4. If I'm the Suns, I got to get Kevin Durant and to a lesser extent Devin
Yeah.
Booker a lot more involved in game 2, and I suspect that Monty Williams will do that.
So game 2, the Suns are laying 7.5. Based on what you saw in game 1, is that too many points to lay with the Suns, or you think they can cover that?
I don't feel great about it either way. My guess is Phoenix probably wins somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, NBA point spreads in that kind of range are always tricky because, you saw in the Laker game yesterday or on Sunday, the Lakers, it was a 1-point game with 2 minutes to go, and the Lakers won by 15, right? Like the final couple of minutes of these games tend to sort of be haywire with fouls and
Yeah.
stuff. So I think if you like Phoenix to win, which you probably should, I'd be very surprised if they're down 2-0. They'll probably win by enough to cover. But I could see that one going either way. I think that's right about the range where this will wind up with a Phoenix win.
Yeah, I might look at a total for that game. Okay, moving on. Lakers and Grizzlies. Lakers took the first game 120-112. John Morant, of course, exited the game with a hand injury. X-rays seem to be negative. He's questionable for game 2. How impactful do you think that John Morant is? Memphis is 7-7 without him this season.
It'd be a huge loss, and not just because of missing John Morant, because Memphis has arguably the best backup point guard in the league at Tyus Jones. I think if he was just out, I'd actually like Memphis fine. But it's a combination of John Morant, Steven Adams, and Brandon Clark all being out that really becomes a compounding factor for the Grizzlies. You're looking at playing a Laker team. Anthony Davis was a monster inside in game 1, was the most dominant player on the court, which is what he needs to be for the Lakers to win this series. They had some outlier shooting performances, particularly from Rui Hachimura, who'd never hit more than 4 threes in the game. He hit 5. He's probably not going to do that again. Memphis very clearly let him shoot threes, and he started hitting shots, and, they're going to live with that. But yeah, the combination of potentially no Ja with the no bigs inside for Memphis really puts them behind the 8 ball. Obviously, they need to win game 2 to have a chance in this series realistically. But yeah, disappointing end of game performance from them. And it felt like the life really got sucked out of him when John Morant left the game. And now we'll see if he's going to be able to go in game 2, because if he's not, this could wind up being a pretty short series.
Well, and the Grizzlies talk a lot of talk. And I remember Josh saying they weren't worried about anybody in the West. If they get bounced out in the first round, as a Warriors fan, I will not be sad to see it. How about Austin Reeves? We talked about Hachimura, who was obviously crazy, 21 points. Austin Reeves mic'd up last night saying, I'm him. He dropped 14 in the fourth quarter. Obviously, the internet had a lot of fun with this, but I have to ask you, is Reeves him?
I mean, what he is a really good player. And, the Lakers have, I don't want to say they have a big three because he's not an all-star level player, but
Yeah.
he's a really good quality starter in the NBA. And it's a credit to the Lakers for developing him. They've done a good job of developing players over the past few years. Guys like him, Alex Caruso, Malik Monk went to the Lakers and revived his career before going to Sacramento this year. They've done a nice job of finding reclamation projects or undrafted guys like Caruso and Reeves and turning them into players. And he was huge down the stretch. He played great, really led the Lakers down the stretch to win that game offensively. And, if you are a believer in the Lakers, which I am still skeptical, given they really have not
Yeah.
played anybody at full strength in a while, Reeves is going to have those kind of performances on a consistent basis going forward. Will he be able to? We'll see. But that was a big moment in his first ever playoff game on the road in a really tough place to play. Go down the stretch and win against a good defense was very, very impressive performance from Austin yesterday for sure.
Let's say that the Lakers get out of this first round and they actually make I don't think they're going to win the whole thing, but let's say they make a pretty deep run in the playoffs here. Do you think that this could be LeBron James' last dance?
As in he'll retire, or
Yes.
no, he's not going to retire. He's going to play at least a few more years. I think he's talked a lot about wanting to play with his son, who's still a couple years away from the NBA. So no, we'll be seeing LeBron James play next year and probably for a couple more after that at least.
And you think he'll stay with the Lakers? Most likely, right? He wants to stay in LA.
It remains to be seen. He's got his contract, I think, goes for another year or two, and then I think it's through next season. And then his son can be draft eligible in 2024. And, we'll see what happens at that point. He said he wants to play with Bronny, and, we'll see if that's with the Lakers or elsewhere. But I think the most likely outcome is he's playing for a few more years, and he's doing so in a Laker uniform.
Okay. Do you think Bronny, I mean, I haven't watched Bronny play at all, but is he draft eligible? Do you think that he'll make a splash when he becomes, of age, I guess, if you will?
He just played in the Nike Hoop Summit and the McDonald's All-American game in the last few weeks. He's got a chance to be a first-round pick next year. Our Jonathan Givony has him
Wow.
mocked around 10th in the lottery in 2024. I don't know if he'll be quite that high, but he's got a good chance to be a first-round pick. And certainly, he's going to go to a high major school, probably somewhere out west.
Yeah.
And, he's got a chance to be a pretty good player. If you talk to scouts, they have different ideas of what that'll be, but the general consensus is he's going to be an NBA player, and he probably will be in 2024. And like I said, we'll see what that means for LeBron James at that point.
Oh my gosh, he's got to keep himself healthy, but he does spend $1 million a year keeping himself in good shape. All right, so game 2, Lakers money line is even money. Grizzlies -120. The line's just 1.5. I'm tempted to take the Lakers on the money line in this one at even money. What do you think of game 2? Who wins?
I would think Memphis will win. It's hard to see the Lakers winning 2 in a row in Memphis. They're going to feel there's some level of feeling like you got the job done winning a game on the road as the road team to start the series. And I expect Memphis to come out like a house of fire in game 2. But a lot of this comes down to Ja Morant. If Ja is able to play and be effective, I think the Grizzlies will win. I think it's going to be a long series. I think if he's not able to go and you're down 3 of the top 7 guys on the Grizzlies, then if Anthony Davis could play like he did in game 1, the Lakers are going to have a very good chance to get another win in game 2.
Okay, so moving on tonight, we got a double header. Nets, Sixers, Warriors, and Kings. First up, Nets and Sixers. This line is interesting. Sixers are laying 10, double digits. This over-under is at 214. Sixers 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread versus the Nets this season. The over has hit in 4 out of 5 meetings and 6-0 in the past 6 games for the Nets following a straight-up loss. What do you think of how this game's going to go? The 76ers, 10 points is a lot.
10 points is a lot. The Sixers, I think, though, are just a much better team. They're a much deeper team.
Yeah.
They have much more talent. A lot more talent than the Nets, and they have a lot more size than the Nets. And you saw that in game 1 where the Nets played pretty well. They hit a lot of threes. Mikal Bridges played great again, and they still got overwhelmed by the Sixers. Gave up a ton of wide open threes because they were throwing a ton of bodies at Joel Embiid, and Joel still was able to get his and do whatever he wanted to do. So to me, I'm with you. 10 points is a lot, but I think Philly is by far the better team in this series. And I think they're going to win this game comfortably in game 2.
Okay, now for my favorite game because I am a Bay Area girl. So I'm a Warriors fan. We got the Battle
Yes.
of NorCal here. Kings took the first game. They won their first playoff game since 2006. I will say it was really fun to see how excited Kings fans are because Warriors, the fans have been there so often. It's just not the same thing. What was interesting to me about this game is Sabonis really struggled. He actually only had 12 points, 5 of 17 shooting. Then you had Fox that was just unbelievable, 38 points. You could not stop him. He actually looked more like Steph Curry than Steph Curry looked. And then you had Monk, who was incredible as well with 31, 32 points last night. I don't
Yeah.
know that Monk has the same kind of night. It does seem like Wiggins missed a couple shots there, but I do think he looks pretty good coming off of injury. I like the Warriors in this game. I think it's a must-win game for them. They're minus 125 on the money line. Spread is 1 favoring the Warriors. What do you think of this matchup?
I like Golden State to win the game. Andrew Wiggins was back on the court in game one, looked really good. I thought that was my biggest takeaway from the game. I expect him to start tonight in game two. I expect him to play somewhere closer to 36 to 40 minutes than the 28 he played off the bench in game one. I think that will help the Lakers or the Warriors do a better job of locking up De'Aaron Fox, at least enough to win this game. I also don't expect Malik Monk to go for 32 on 14 for 14 shooting from the line and 8 for 13
No.
from three again. So you combine all that together, and I came away from game one, despite the loss, feeling pretty good about where the Warriors are at. They've won a road game in
Same.
27 straight series. I think they'll win a road game in 28 straight series and get this win tonight, in part also because people might look at the Domantas Sabonis game and think he's going to play way better in game two. I don't really think so. It's a very bad matchup for him. He likes to play with his size and strength inside and bully people. He can't really do that with Kevon Looney and Draymond Green. And the Warriors are not worried
No.
about him being a shooter and are going to play off of his handoffs and not let De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Huerter and these other guys get going. So I think Golden State wins game two. I liked what I saw in game one. I think the Warriors are winning the West, and I think we'll see them start going that direction with a nice
Yes, Tim. Warriors in 6. That's my bet. So I hope that one pans
There
out. And
you
it's a
go.
must-win game. They got to win. And I feel the same as you do. I feel really good about that game. They were leading for a big portion of it. They missed some shots down there by the stretch, and I think they're going to do a better job guarding Fox if they can. I mean, that guy was unbelievable. Monk, I don't think is going to have the 31 points. Agree with everything that you said. Celtics and Hawks. This one was interesting. Celtics 110, Hawks 99. It seems to me like the Celtics just have the Hawks number. Trae Young was not great last night. He missed the first 6 attempts, ended the night with just 16 points, 5 of 18 from shooting. Celtics laying 10 double digits. This is one where I might be tempted to lay the 10 because I really don't see the Hawks coming up any better here tonight. What do you think? Or
Yeah, I
tomorrow?
would agree. I think they're now 4-0 against the Hawks this year. They've been able to get a ton of threes up in every game. The Celtics have exactly the kind of long, athletic perimeter defenders that are switchable, that give Trae Young a lot of trouble. I don't think it's a good matchup at all for Atlanta, and I expect Boston to cruise in this series. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a sweep, and I'll be pretty surprised if they don't win pretty comfortably again in game two.
I agree with that one. Okay, this is I feel like the most exciting matchup on the East. It's similar to the Warriors and Kings on the West, the Knicks and the Cavs. Knicks barely won 101 to 97. Jalen Brunson, worth all of his money. He scored 21 of his 27 points in the second half. Game 2, Cavs are still favored minus 4.5. This over under 212.5. What do you think of this one?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how this series shakes out. I think Cleveland will get game two just because I expect it to be a long series. And again, sort of like Memphis, the home team losing game one, you expect them to come out and be much more aggressive in game two, especially because the Knicks were able to win some of the hustle points, some of the, a lot of offensive rebounds, a lot of loose balls went New York's way in game one. I expect that to even out a little bit in game two. But you saw some real structural advantages for the Knicks in this first game. Things I thought that could allow them to win this series to begin with. I mentioned the offensive rebounding. Knicks were the second best offensive rebounding team in the league. The Cavs were 20th in defensive rebounding. You saw that show up in a big way in game one. You saw Emmanuel Quickley and Josh Hart have huge impacts off the bench. Cleveland has no bench. They have 4 players, and then all question marks are worse after that. JB Bickerstaff, the coach of the Cavs, really couldn't find anything that worked outside of his top 4 guys. And I thought Tom Thibodeau, the coach of the Knicks, had a nice game plan where they basically put everything on the shoulders of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland to score. And I just don't think those guys are going to be able to score enough over 7 games if the Knicks are able to keep playing that way. So I do think the Cavs win game 2, but if you're a Knicks fan, I would come out of game 1 feeling pretty good about a matchup where they've now won 4 out of 5 against Cleveland this year, thinking that, the Knicks could finally get back to the second round again for the first time in a decade.
Wow. I hope so. I have a lot of Knicks fans, and it's similar to Kings fans. They're just so excited to
Yes.
win one game. So hopefully that happens for them. Okay, so I know that you like the Warriors to win the West, as do I. I like either the Warriors or the Bucks. I was really high on the Bucks to win the whole thing. I'm worried about the Giannis situation, but as it stands right now, who do you think takes the whole thing?
I think Giannis will be back. I'm going to say the Bucks. I'm going to say the Bucks are going to play the Warriors in the finals, which was my pick before the playoffs started. And yeah, I think the Bucks are the best team, assuming Giannis is healthy. I think they're going to win the East, and I think Golden State will get through the West. They don't match up. They match up very well with the Celtics. If it's Warriors Celtics again, I would like Golden State to potentially win. Like you said, become the first 6 seed since those Rockets in '95 with Akeem. Also, were a defending champion to come back and win in the playoffs and win the finals. But ultimately, I think the Bucks have too much firepower, and if Giannis is healthy, they are the best team, and they should win in the end.
I agree with you, but I hate to hear it, and I hope that the Warriors can come out one more for 5 rings, but it seems a little bit unlikely this season. Tim, thank you so much for your time. You can find Tim Bontemps on ESPN.com, on ESPN channel as well, and on Twitter at Tim Bontemps on Twitter. All right, thank you so much, Tim, for your time, and good luck with the game tonight in Philly.
Appreciate
Go
it.
Sixers.
Thanks for having me.
Time now for Mox Locks. Here are my picks for the games. I'm taking Trae Young under 1.5 threes made. It's at plus 143. Now the Celtics have the best defense versus point guards, surrendering 1.8 3-point made per game. However, Young has hit under this number with just 1 made 3 in both game 1 and the play-in tournament. He is 8 of 49 from the 3-point line in his last 7 playoff games. That is the most attempts with the fewest makes in a 7-game span in playoff history. So look for him to continue that trend. Plus 143, only 1 3-pointer made from Trae Young. And you already know it. Of course, I'm taking the Warriors minus the 1 tonight versus the Kings. There is a lot. You heard Tim. There's a lot to build on from game 1. They had a large lead for a big portion of the game. You have to imagine that Monk is not going to have another 31-point game. I expect Sabonis to still struggle up against Looney, aka Loon Dog. I know that Wiggins is going to continue to improve specifically from beyond the arc, and Curry's going to dominate, and Clay's going to step up. The only thing I'm worried about is Fox. They have to find a way to guard Fox. This is a must-win game for the Warriors. I think that they do it. Those are my Mox Locks. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social at Moxie Bets, and we'll see you next time.